the next phase of relationship. So we go from that honeymoon, limerence, oxytocin, all these chemicals are coursing through your veins and it feels so good and it's like a drug. And that then we transition to what we call the trust building phase of relationship, which is the crucial second phase that a lot of couples struggle right there, because what you're trying to do in the trust building phase is figure out, are you going to be there for me? Can I count on you? Are you going to have my back?
Welcome to yourbrilliance.com. I'm your host, Amy Waterman. If you're a woman who's dating with the intention of marrying someday, there's something you should know. The tips and tricks from popular dating advice can get you short-term results, but at the cost of sabotaging your happily ever after. You see, the way we date matters. It sets a foundation for what's to come. So if you're following advice that says to push this attraction trigger to create this chemical reaction, we might be missing the point. I wanted to find someone who knows how healthy, happy marriages begin. And that's why I felt so lucky when Stacy Hubbard said yes. Stacy is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a certified Gottman therapist, and a master trainer with the Gottman Institute. She has a master's degree in counseling with a focus in marriage and family therapy, and she works out of her private practice in Ashland, Oregon. She recently teamed up with the Gottmans to create a one-day interactive workshop for singles to create more healthy relationships in the world. And today she's going to talk to us about how the Gottman method can teach us how to date to marry. Welcome, Stacy.
Hi, thank you so much. That was a great introduction and I'm very happy to be here. So it was very easy to say yes.
What I'm really excited about is, probably I should do a disclaimer, I love the Gottmans. I love the Gottmans, but I know that not everybody out there knows who the Gottmans is, why they're important, and why should we even listen to them? So let's start out. Who are the Gottmans?
Yeah, great question. I'm always surprised at how many people still don't know about the Gottman method or John and Julie Gottman. So I'm happy to talk about this. So John and Julie Gottman are the co-founders of the Gottman Institute. And John Gottman is the person who started doing all this research on marital satisfaction and what makes marriages succeed and fail and divorce prediction in the 70s. So he has been doing this really intensive research and scientific data collection on couples for over 40 years now. So he and his research partner, Bob Levinson, really started doing this work, way back in the 70s on really looking at intricately what do successful couples do and what do unsuccessful couples do, or we call them the masters and the disasters. And so they got really good at divorce prediction and knowing just from watching a couple interact for, an hour, half an hour, of which couples would get divorced. Because they could really recognize the patterns and how they talk to each other and what their physiology was like. So they were getting about 94% accuracy on divorce prediction, which is amazing. And then Julie came along, and Julie is a therapist as well. She's a PhD psychologist, really brilliant clinician. So she came along and John and her met and she started going, wait, you have all this data, you could actually help people with it. And, John was like, I hadn't thought about that. I guess you're right. So then they actually turned, all this amazing data that they had and all these amazing information and statistics, and then created a therapy method. So it's basically, in a nutshell, we know exactly what successful couples do. And we're talking over 4,000 couples at this point. So it's not just 20 or 30 couples, it's thousands of couples. So we know exactly what healthy couples do, and we know the negative characteristics, the negative behaviors of those disaster couples or the couples who really struggle. And then we've got all these interventions to help couples turn from that disaster category into masters. So that's kind of in a nutshell the history, and then how the therapy developed over the last 20 years. And now it's, this big institute with all this new research happening, and then the therapy and couples workshops, and we're certifying therapists all over the world at this point. So it's pretty broad reaching at this point. So hopefully that's kind of in a nutshell, some information, not too much. Yeah.
So one thing too, I will add is that they are also masters of social media. So if you like social media, if you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, do follow the Gottman Institute. I'll never forget the first time the Gottman Institute liked one of my tweets, because I was like, yay for the Gottmans. They're like. So anyway, so that little bit of fandom aside,
Yeah.
one of the things that is clear from what you're talking about is the Gottmans really know what makes marriages work. But the question is, of course, how does their research apply to single people? Because we're not even in relationships yet. So how does that work?
Great question. So I have been lucky enough over the last 3 years to be developing this new workshop for single people based on the Gottman principles, and been working really closely with, the clinical director up there, and then the Gottmans themselves, and the vice president and the CEO. And so originally when this idea kind of came about and we really started thinking, we really need to reach this audience. And there's all these people out there who need this information, who aren't lucky enough to be raised in an environment where their parents were masters of relationships. So they didn't have the role modeling, which most people don't have that luxury. So they need this information. And how do you be successful in relationship? So the thing I will say is all of our research is on married couple or committed couples. I would say they're not all married, but we're talking about committed relationship and what works. So all of the research is on relationships. So we don't have any research yet on single people, but the way we really frame it is we know what successful couples in long-term relationship do. So we want to teach that to single people so that they can become healthy partners and look for healthy habits. And also the other thing about this in the workshop is it teaches you skills that apply to friendship, to coworkers, to interacting with family members. So it really is more of a broad approach to, obviously we're targeting romantic relationships, but it really does apply to all aspects of relationship and interactions. So that's another way to look at it. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. So what I like about it is often with dating advice, there's kind of the main kind of dating advice is, do you want every man to love you? Do you want every man to want you? Do you want every man to feel attracted to you? And that's the sort of advice that we see a lot of, but we don't really hear a lot of advice about, can you be the sort of person to create and sustain a healthy relationship? Because it's not quite so sexy. It's not quite so exciting. It's much more exciting to have every man drool over you than to know that you've got the capacity to create and sustain lasting love, which is funny because most of us don't actually care about the drooling men. We actually just want that one guy that we could be with forever. So I really appreciate this approach you're taking. And I want to know a little bit more about this workshop. Is it an in-person workshop? Is it an online workshop? What sort of things will singles learn if they take it?
So the origins of the workshop were, it was all about in person, and we've really had good luck with that because being in the same room with a bunch of other people who are in your same situation and being single, and I'm single. So that's another piece of why this is so important to me, is I've been kind of searching and dealing with all those struggles of dating and online dating and first dates and disappointment. And so that kind of helps give me some street cred when I'm doing this workshop. People are really thankful to know, like, oh, you know what this is like. Yeah, I do. But what we're trying to do now is do a blend of in-person, and we're also trying to create online content. So this is still even though it's been 3 years, it's still in its infancy stages in a lot of ways. So what people can probably be looking for, even in the next few months to next 6 months to year, is some online content where people can purchase this content and then work, like, kind of chip away at it at their own pace, because we're finding that's what people want. We did a live stream, like a live stream version of the workshop in January, and we had 200 people from all over the world attending that. So that was really cool, and they were able to type in questions, and we had question and answer. And but what we found is, I think, with the feedback, that people want to be able to access this content, but to be able to do it at their own pace, and to be able to kind of work or go back and redo something, or do a module and then type in their questions. And then we're going to go in and answer or review the comments under each video section. And there is even some thought of doing an app where there's an app just for single people focused on the Gottman methods. and that they can access all that content that way. So there's a lot of momentum and interest in this. And I think what we'd like to do is have a blend. Some people are always going to want the in-person experience.
Yeah.
And that's important to me because it's been really amazing to be in a room of another 100 single people and be doing these interactive exercises. But we know some people can't do that. They can't travel to Seattle, or they aren't comfortable being in a room of that many people. And so they feel more comfortable doing it on their computer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the movement. And I think really this is going to be over the next year, 2 years, that this is really developing and growing. So I think it's going to be a long-term project, but there's a lot of potential, as you can imagine.
Yeah. So I just want to compare that a little bit to kind of a lot of the dating advice out there. So this is really different from what's out there right now, because what's out there right now, like right now, what's really hot are things like text you can send your man to create feelings of desire, or phrases you can say that will spark chemistry between you. That is really, really different from the stuff you're talking about, because what you're talking about, if I understand right, is actual skills in creating connection and a bond. Do you think this other stuff, the sparking desire and sparking chemistry, I mean, is that stuff good still on its own? I kind of think of it like as pickup lines for women. If you have a line to give a guy, maybe you feel more confident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I looked at some of that, those offers and kind of all the buzz around these keywords. And, I actually, some of those I thought could be useful even and I'm always thinking about kind of long-term committed relationship, right? If somebody's looking for ways to kind of create some spark and creativity in their love life, some of those things were actually really interesting, some of the phrases. But what I know about the initial phase of attraction and chemistry, and what we call the honeymoon phase or the limerence phase, which is that first phase of relationship where you meet somebody and there's connection and attraction and chemistry, and you can't think about anything else and you're kind of infatuated. That really is the first phase of relationship. It's a crucial phase. But we also know not everybody has chemistry. So, and that goes down to even real scientific smell and pheromones, and that there are, that term, we just didn't have chemistry, or we have chemistry. That's very real. And so no matter what phrases you say or what words you use in a text, if you're sitting down face to face and dating somebody, first, second, third date, if you don't have that chemistry and there's not that interest, it can't be yet manufactured.
Yes. And I want to just quickly mention 8 dates here, because I will admit I have not read the full book. I've read parts of it, but one of the really, so 8 dates, first of all, is the Gottman's latest book. It's about 8 conversations you can have with your partner to really create intimacy. And one of the really interesting things that they say is a study has come out that has been very, very comprehensive, looking at the question of, can we predict attraction? So, all these online dating sites say, if you just fill out our little survey, we're going to be able to tell you that this person is a 80% match or a 90% match. You guys are really going to get on based on your answers to these survey questions. This study found out that actually none of it works, because of exactly what you said. Right. Chemistry is so much about the pheromones, the smell of the other person, that, and that goes down to your genes, because are your genes a good match for this person? You can't predict that, right? That's just really, your body knows the answer when you're in front of them, but no survey is ever going to tell you that. So I was just fascinated, because we have always thought that compatibility, similarity, I mean, surely that's all you need to know, but it's not, is it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And John's talked about that for quite a while. And one thing that we know is, you could have like all the same interests and have all these really great conversations with somebody over text or email or a phone, but until you sit down face to face, you don't really know if it is going to click. And so Lori Davis, who wrote Love at First Click, says the brain is the best algorithm, and meaning, like, until you really meet face to face and have that actual physical interaction, you don't know. And that's why a lot of people really say don't spend weeks and months chatting with somebody. You really want to meet them sooner rather than later, because you could really spend all that time and then sit down and go, ooh, you know what, this is just, there's no chemistry here.
And it's nobody's fault. That's the other thing I really want to emphasize here, because it comes down to your genes. It's actually, it's not that, the other person didn't dress well. It's not that they didn't comb their hair right. It's not that they didn't say the witty comment. It's actually your genes are not a match, and your body is telling you that because you can sense the pheromones. So this is great, because as a woman, it always feels like very personal when there's no chemistry. Like, I wasn't hot enough. Well, no, it's not that at all. So I want to ask you then a question. So we've talked about the importance of chemistry, but what should dating do to prepare us for a healthy relationship? Like how can we date in a way that's really setting the foundation for a lifetime of love?
So what I will say is the importance of the next phase of relationship. So we go from that honeymoon, limerence, oxytocin, all these chemicals are coursing through your veins and it feels so good and it's like a drug. And that then we transition to what we call the trust building phase of relationship, which is the crucial second phase that a lot of couples struggle right there, because what you're trying to do in the trust building phase is figure out, are you going to be there for me? Can I count on you? Are you going to have my back when I need you to be there for me? Do I matter to you? And that's really what John writes a lot about in What Makes Love Last, which is an amazing book on trust and commitment. How do you build trust and commitment and avoid betrayal? And that trust building phase is starting to discover, like, are you going to be there for me? And then commitment is the third phase, which is the kind of what John calls jumping in with 2 feet or jumping down the rabbit hole. Like, this is my person, I'm choosing them, and whether you're married or not, really that long-term commitment, that's true commitment versus conditional commitment, which is, thinking like, well, I'm just here till somebody better comes along, or you're really nurturing resentments or thinking negative thoughts about the person or negative comparisons. Like, I could do better. My life would be better if I was with that person or that person. So in thinking about that trust building piece, is where I think it's really important that people start to get a sense of what am I looking for in a long-term relationship, which I think is so cool about the 8 Dates book, because it really is these structured conversations. And they say in this, you can't really start this soon enough. You could start this really new into a relationship. You could be doing this 2 years into a relationship or 5 years into a relationship. There's no set time. But to really be looking at, how do we build this trust, and do I feel like you're the right person for me? And there's a lot more I could talk about that. I mean, I could talk about that for hours probably. But also John writes a lot about finding somebody who is trustworthy, and how can you start to pay attention to that? And so in What Makes Love Last, which is a great book, he's got five ways that you can tell that somebody's trustworthy. And I work with a lot of my single clients on that, whether they're male or female, is how can you start to be looking for these signs of trustworthiness? Because what we know about that early phase, the limerence or honeymoon phase, is people miss red flags because we call it the oxytocin haze. You're kind of clouded with that, like, feel good, they're perfect, they're so perfect, that you miss red flags. So that's where you really want to be paying attention to, is this person really transparent? Are they showing up for me? Are they doing what they say? Are they following through? Are they inviting me to meet their friends? Do my friends like them? Are they really following through on their commitments? So some of those things are really important for people to be paying attention to. And one more thing is, I will notice that some people will say, I'm so wanting this long-term relationship, but I keep choosing the wrong person. I keep choosing people who lie to me and cheat on me and bail when it gets hard. So that's one other thing, is looking at choosing safe people, and what do safe people look like, and how can you start to be paying attention to really choosing people who can show up and have secure attachments. And one thing that Eli Finkel talks about, and he does a lot of work on these mate selection and choosing people. He talks about choosing somebody who has relationship aptitude, and that's more important than finding somebody who matches perfectly with you, who sees eye to eye with you, so that is more important than similarity, or those matching sites do all this, like, you're perfect for each other. But if that person likes all the same things as you, but doesn't have the ability to be like secure in a relationship and have low levels of neuroticism and no addiction and So there's all these things that, that he talks about that really make a lot of sense. So relationship aptitude, if you want to know more about that, Eli Finkel is doing a lot of really cool work around this topic.
And there's also a great article on the Gottman Institute website about the importance of emotional intelligence in men and how that can predict the health of a marriage. Now, for those of you watching, if you want to get in on this workshop and find out how it's developing or just learn more about Stacy's work, we have a link for you. Just go to yourbrilliance.org/Stacy. That's yourbrilliance.org/STACY. Stacy, thank you so much. We're coming to the end, and I wanted to know if you had any last message you would like to leave our viewers with.
Yes. Well, I encourage them, if they don't know yet much about the Gottman Institute, to follow them on Twitter. Like you said, they've got a blog that comes out really frequently, and you'll get updates about the new blogs that are coming out. And that's a really great way to stay on top of things. The new book, 8 Dates, that just came out, and as well as John and Julie's past, they've got 15, 20 books, or reach out to me if you want to know more about the workshop, because it's still developing. So there's going to be more updates coming as we move through this. So contact me, any questions you have. I love talking about this topic. So just know I'm there to talk to you about this more. And hopefully some of this info has been helpful for you. It's been helpful for me in this whole dating process and trying to find the right one, you know.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And thank you out there for watching. We hope to see you again soon. Until then, let your brilliance shine.